Imagine a room. It is negative 20 degrees outside. You are a stoker on a German supply train, barreling toward the Eastern Front. Your world is a paradox of freezing cold and blistering heat. Your job is primitive. It is rhythmic. You are the heartbeat of the machine. Shovel, swing, throw, repeat. You do this thousands of times a shift. Your muscles move on instinct. You don't look at the fuel. Why would you? Coal is coal. It is the most mundane, harmless substance on Earth. It is just a pile of black rocks rattling at your feet. You drive your shovel into the tender. You scoop up a pile of anthracite. It looks exactly like every other shovel load you have thrown into the fire for the past 3 years. But this time, one of those rocks is a lie. You don't notice it. It has the same weight. It has the same jagged edges. It is covered in the same grime. You swing your arms. The coal flies into the roaring maw of the firebox. You wipe the sweat from your forehead. You check the pressure gauge. Everything is normal. Then, silence. For 3 seconds, the fire does exactly what it is supposed to do. It consumes the fuel. But as the outer shell of that one specific rock burns away, it doesn't turn into ash. It turns into pure kinetic energy. Boom! There is no warning, no ticking clock, no incoming whistle of a bomb. The explosion happens inside the pressure vessel. The massive steel boiler, pressurized to 200 psi, is ripped open from the inside out. Superheated steam expands instantly, liquefying everything in the cab. The locomotive jumps the tracks, twisting into a screeching wreck of steel and fire, dragging 20 cars of ammunition and Tiger tanks into the abyss. The investigators will arrive in the morning. They will find twisted metal. They will blame a boiler defect. They will blame partisan sabotage on the tracks. They will never suspect the fuel. Welcome to World War II Mind Games. Today we deconstruct the coal torpedo, the most ingenious, microscopic Trojan horse of the Second World War. This is the story of how American intelligence weaponized the laws of thermodynamics and turned the Wehrmacht's own logistics against itself. To understand why the Allies resorted to such underhanded tactics, we have to look at the strategic map of 1942. The Third Reich was a monster of industry. But like any monster, it had a circulatory system. That system was the Deutsche Reichsbahn, the German Imperial Railway. Every gallon of fuel for Rommel in Africa, every artillery shell for the siege of Stalingrad, and every soldier sent to Normandy moved by rail. The steam locomotive was the beating heart of the Nazi war machine. The Allies had a problem. How do you stop a train? You can bomb the tracks from 20,000 feet, but rail lines are notoriously easy to fix. German pioneer units could repair a bombed track in less than 12 hours. You can send commandos to blow up bridges, but bridges are heavily guarded by the SS. The OSS, the Office of Strategic Services, the precursor to the CIA, needed a solution that bypassed the guards. They needed a weapon that didn't attack the train, but attacked the trust the Germans had in their own machines. Enter Stanley P. Lovell. He was the Director of Research and Development for the OSS, a man often called the American Professor Moriarty. Lovell knew that you couldn't get an agent inside the locomotive cab to plant a bomb. That was suicide. But he realized that the locomotive had a fatal flaw: its appetite. A steam engine consumes tons of coal every hour. That coal sits in massive, unguarded piles in rail yards all across occupied Europe. It sits in open wagons. It sits on docks. It was a logistical blind spot. The Germans guarded the trains, but they didn't guard the rocks. The logic was terrifyingly simple. If you can't bring the bomb to the target, make the target bring the bomb to itself. Let's strip away the history and look at the engineering. This wasn't just a rock with gunpowder inside. It was a masterpiece of chemical camouflage. Early prototypes were crude. The British SOE tried using hollowed-out real coal, but drilling into anthracite is difficult. It shatters. Then they tried casting iron shells painted black. But iron is too heavy. If a stoker picked it up, he would feel the weight difference immediately. A heavy rock is suspicious. The OSS perfected the design using a new revolutionary material, plastic explosive. They used Composition C, a malleable, putty-like explosive. This was the game changer. They didn't need a metal shell anymore. They cast the explosive itself into the shape of a lump of coal. Here is the genius part. To make it look and feel real, they didn't just paint it. They mixed actual coal dust into the outer layer of the plastic explosive before it dried. This gave it the correct texture, the correct sheen, and most importantly, the correct smell if it was chipped. But coal isn't uniform. Coal from the Ruhr Valley looks different from coal in France or Italy. Some is shiny anthracite, some is dull bituminous. To solve this, the OSS issued a rare, specialized piece of equipment to their field agents, the camouflage kit. Here is a fact often overlooked in history books. Agents weren't just given bombs, they were given art supplies. The kit contained tubes of liquid latex and various shades of black and gray paint. An agent in the field could take a blank explosive core and within minutes paint it to match the specific local coal supply of the rail yard they were infiltrating. Now let's look at the trigger. Inside the core, buried deep within the Composition C, was a standard detonator, usually a number 10 time pencil, or a specialized heat-activated fuse. The mechanism relied on thermodynamics. When the coal is tossed into the firebox, the temperature spikes to over 1,000 degrees Celsius instantly. The outer skin of coal dust burns off. The heat penetrates the core. The fuse triggers. The explosion wasn't massive, usually only about 2 pounds of explosives. But in a confined space, physics does the heavy lifting. The blast wave shatters the cast iron walls of the boiler. The sudden release of pressure causes a belly, a boiling liquid, expanding vapor explosion. It turns the water inside the engine into a bomb more powerful than TNT. The locomotive essentially digests itself. But the physical destruction of the train was actually the secondary goal. The primary goal was psychological. War is about efficiency. The Germans were masters of efficiency. The coal torpedo was designed to destroy that efficiency by introducing a new variable, paranoia. Imagine the aftermath of the first few explosions. The Wehrmacht investigators find a blown-up train. They suspect a partisan mine. But then it happens again and again in areas where there were no partisans. Eventually, they find an unexploded piece of coal in a tender. The secret is out. This is where the mind game truly begins. Suddenly, every pile of coal in Europe became a potential threat. A stoker could no longer just shovel. He had to look. He had to inspect. He had to hesitate. Fear slows you down. If a train crew is terrified that their fuel is rigged, they work slower. They argue. They refuse to take locomotives out. The Germans reacted exactly as the OSS hoped. They panicked. They were forced to divert thousands of infantry soldiers, men who were desperately needed on the Eastern Front, to stand guard over coal piles in France and Norway. Imagine the absurdity. An elite SS division, armed with machine guns, standing in the rain, guarding rocks. The OSS escalated the psychological warfare. They started dropping fake rumors. They leaked intelligence that millions of these coal bombs had been scattered across the Reich. In reality, only a few thousand were made. But the Germans didn't know that. They implemented ridiculous security measures. Here is a rare fact that illustrates the level of German desperation. In 1944, a directive was issued to certain rail units to conduct hammer tests. Soldiers had to physically smash samples of coal from random wagons with hammers to see if they split like rock or deformed like plastic. Think about the time lost. Think about the man-hours wasted smashing rocks instead of fighting the war. That is the definition of a successful mind game. The coal torpedo was a triumph of American ingenuity, but it stood on the shoulders of history. The concept wasn't actually invented in World War II. Visuals, sepia-tone photos of the American Civil War, ironclad ships. It was originally conceived during the American Civil War by a Confederate captain named Thomas Edgeworth Courtney. He created cast-iron coal bombs to sink Union steamships. But the technology of the 1860s was flawed. The fuses were unreliable, and the black powder was weak. The OSS took a 19th century idea and refined it with 20th century chemistry. So, did it win the war? Not on its own, but it contributed to the death by 1,000 cuts that bled the Nazi regime dry. We have records of locomotives destroyed in France, North Africa, and even inside Germany itself. But the most telling story of its success comes from a declassified report regarding a German general's train in Norway. The train wasn't blown up. It was delayed for 48 hours. Why? Because the station master found one suspicious-looking lump of coal near the tracks. He was so terrified that he ordered the entire tender of the general's train to be emptied and inspected by hand, piece by piece. That 48-hour delay meant the general missed a critical strategic meeting. No explosion occurred. No one died. But the mission was a total success. The weapon worked without even detonating. The coal torpedo remains one of the most elegant weapons in the history of clandestine warfare. It erased the line between the battlefield and the mundane. It turned the environment into the enemy. After the war, the idea didn't vanish. It evolved. During the Cold War, the CIA took the molding technology developed for the coal bomb and applied it to other objects. They created dead rats hollowed out to hold dead drops. They created bricks that could record audio. It taught military planners a lesson that is still relevant today. The most dangerous trap is not the one you see. It is the one you need. You can avoid a tripwire. You can avoid a minefield. But you cannot avoid fuel. So here is a question for you. Visuals, the host or text on screen appearing over a pile of coal. If you were a German commander and you knew these coal bombs were out there, would you have prioritized speed and risked your train? Or would you have prioritized safety and lost the war? Let me know your strategy in the comments below. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the hidden history of WW2 Mind Games, make sure to subscribe to WW2 Survival. Next week, we uncover a trap so devious, the British government kept it a secret for 50 years. Stay sharp and watch where you step.